mechanism.
All right, let me bring in the rest of our panel. CNBC contributor, syndicated columnist Jerry Bowyer. We have Michael Pinto, Delta Global Advisors, CNBC contributor Don Luskin of Trend Macro, and Brian Domitrovich. Is that right, Brian Domitrovich?
You got it, Larry.
All right, great. He's assistant history professor, Sam Houston State, and author of a very good book, Econoclass. It's all about the supply-side revolution and logic. Steve Odland is going to stay with us. Let me begin with you, Brian. You heard what Mr. Odland said. He's running a big company, seems to have pretty good knowledge of what's on the economy. What's your take?
Hey, what a great idea. Tighten money and cut taxes. That's the exact supply-side solution that was done 4 times in the 20th century, as I lay out in Econoclass, and immediately economic crisis was put to pasture for the long term.
Do you think supply-side economics is still relevant? You know, we got some turncoats. My old friend Bruce Bartlett being one of them. He's out there saying supply-side worked to stop stagflation, but it has no bearing today and it's not the right prescription.
Larry, you know as well as anybody that God put supply-side economics on this earth for exactly the crisis we have today. The dollar's collapsing, so what you do is you tighten money to guarantee its value, and then you cut taxes so that people have the scarce dollar, and you increase the demand for the dollar. It's the perfect recipe for this crisis.
Michael Pinto, why does Wall Street think a cheap dollar is good for stocks and recovery? And you heard Mr. Odland out there. He laid it out pretty nicely, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
What is up with this Wall Street logic?
I don't know.
Couldn't this blow us up?
Yeah, of course it is. You know, what happened to Britain, look what happened to them. When they lost their world's reserve currency status, that marked the end of their empire. The U.S. dollar is now the red-headed stepchild of global currencies, and for all of the right reasons. Look, we have a $1.9 trillion monetary base. Interest rate differentials are getting wider. You want to put your money with Ben Bernanke and earn 0, or go over with Glenn Stevens at the Reserve Bank of Australia and earn 3 1/4?
I like Australia.
I love Australia.
I think they're doing a heck of a good job.
Our budget deficit is skyrocketing. These are the reasons why the currency is weakening. We don't need talk. We need action. We have to strengthen our currency and preserve the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency.
All right, so I'm going to bring Don in a second, but Jerry Bowyer, let's go over to you on this whole debate.
Yeah.
Why does Wall Street insist? I mean, Wall Street can be very wrong, okay? Let's just state that right at the top. Why does Wall Street insist that a devalued dollar is good? Why does Wall Street willing to overlook anti-supply side policies such as laid out by Steve Odland on taxing and spending and debt creation and so forth?
Because they went to Harvard Business School and learned Keynesian nonsense. Wharton. Or Wharton, maybe. That's why. That's how they got those jobs. You know, they're smart guys, but they got the wrong model.
And does the model work? I mean, do you agree with what Brian said? The king dollar, low tax rate, limited government, free trade model. I was down in Washington yesterday celebrating the Jack Kemp Foundation opening and talking about Jack, who was a great apostle of supply side. Does it still work, Jerry? Because we're not on the supply side now.
Supply side economics is not capable of becoming obsolete any more than gravity is capable of being obsolete. It's a natural law. It's an iron law of human nature. Bruce Bartlett might have gotten bored with it. Some other, David Brooks, maybe the New York Times might have gotten bored with the idea. But it's reality, and we're seeing it play out in the world. The world looks at us. We're non-competitive. The terms of trade, as Art Laffer would say, have shifted. The dollar's being depreciated, and they invest elsewhere. You know, for 2,000 years, the freedom thing was moving west. And at this moment, it seems to have reversed and is starting to move back east again because capital goes where it's treated well, and it's not being treated very well here right now.
Now, Don Luskin, I was very interested to read your article in the National Review Online, my favorite website.
Be kind, Larry.
You are, look, I love you, buddy, but I got to go here. You are absolving the Treasury Department from any responsibility for this cheap dollar policy, which I maintain could blow up in our face sometime in the next 3 to 6 months. I can be a short-term bull on the market and the economy, but I don't like the direction of policy. Now, did they give you some special Kool-Aid when you were inside the Treasury?
No.
I mean, this is my pal Don Luskin. I'm reading this thing paragraph after paragraph saying, what? Huh? How is this possible?
Look, I'm going to even disappoint you more profoundly, if that is possible.
Yes.
Which is that the Kool-Aid they gave me is that Tim Geithner agreed with something that I believed before I even walked into my meeting with him, which is that no matter what it says in the Constitution, the reality is that it's Ben Bernanke that ultimately controls the value of the dollar because purchasing power is the ultimate determinant determinant of any currency's value. Purchasing power is a synonym for inflation, and Ben Bernanke controls inflation. So Tim Geithner is right.
All right, so
when he says
Geithner's
that's not my
passing the
job.
buck to Bernanke.
Quite literally.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
He's
the buck,
passing the
literally.
buck
Yes.
to Bernanke. Now, did he say that to you specifically? Did he say that? He said, Don, go after the Fed and Bernanke. It's not my... You know, the Treasury sits on the exchange...
That would be an over-aggressive
And
quotation.
constitutionally, the Treasury has the play. And they have a $50 billion exchange stabilization fund. And Robert Rubin would, time to time, go out and buy some dollars to make a signal to the world. Now, I know that intervention doesn't work in the long run.
That's a patch.
Yep.
That's
But
just
the
a
fact
patch.
of the matter is, why doesn't Geithner, you know, make a little signal? The rest of the world's central banks today, they're all buying dollars. We're the only one that's not buying dollars.
There's a very important thing that has to happen right now, which is that the Federal Reserve and the Treasury have got to disengage from each other, and the Federal Reserve has got to become an independent agency again. It lost its independence when it did the AIG deal because it was the only agency that could do it in a pinch. So right now, Geithner is doing the right thing by saying, this is the Fed's prerogative. I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to tell them.
Why doesn't he buy dollars? Why doesn't he just buy dollars?
But now let me earn your confidence again by dissing Tim Geithner.
Oh.
Because he does not have a strong dollar policy. He has a weak dollar policy because the one thing he can do, he can't run the printing press like Ben Bernanke can, but he can go to Beijing and he can tell the Chinese to revalue the yuan. And when you tell the Chinese to revalue the yuan, that is a weak dollar policy.
All right, so
Larry, can we absorb $9 trillion in debt without a quantitative easing? And if we can't, doesn't that mean Treasury Department has an impact on monetary policy? This amount of deficit spending, it seems, I mean, that the markets are already pricing in a quantitative easing to fund these deficits.
Right. Steve Odland, would you like to see some leadership from the U.S. Treasury on the question of the